Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for July. And if I could make a motion to open this meeting. Today is Thursday, July 18, and it's 5:30 p.m. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Gentlemen, thank you. If we could go to the Pledge of Allegiance and start with that. So I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. So, look, I'm not going to do a roll call. Everybody's here. Don't need to do it. So we have everybody present today. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to say a few words. First, I certainly would like to congratulate Michael Anderson and Michel Bourgard for their reappointment. These two to my left, they deserve the trust of the mayor, who's disguised in the audience today, as sound advisors for this planning commission. Both of them are terrific partners, and I want to thank them for their work and their commitment to their community, and we've got a lot more to do.
Thank you.
I also want to congratulate Jeannie Zdrulas on her appointment to the newly focused Business Revitalization Steering Committee. I know she hit the ground running, and her contribution is already recognized by many of your peers. So thank you, Jeannie, for doing this. And this is the link between the Planning Commission and that steering committee to revitalize our business activities down in our commercial district. Now, I also want to welcome a new member to my right to the commission, Jacob. And Jacob is CEO of the Urban Logistic Advisory Service Company, and that's a company which solves critical infrastructure problems for companies around our nation. I hope I summarized this properly, but Jacob served on the planning board, so he's very familiar with this room. He was on the planning board for a number of years previously, working with, I guess, Mr. Stevenson in Irving back then, right? So he has both engineering and zoning experience, which will be really helpful to this group. Jacob, do you want to add a few words? I'm sure I botched up what you actually do.
Yeah, no, it's just nice to be back, and nice to be back in the room. Nice to see old friends again, and it's just nice to be back home. Thank you for the honor of serving our village community again.
All right. Well, thank you, Jacob. Finally, I'm looking forward to chair this commission until my term ends actually next year. I started working for this community as a chair of the ethics board 7 years ago now, so I've been doing this for a while. I just want to share something with you that many of you in this room may not know. The Southampton Village first created a zoning association with bylaws on September 16, 1954. And there was a council of 12 at the time, and that included my great-grandfather, Chester Dale, who initially chaired the council. So I guess for me, it's a fourth generation up here. Having said that, we're going to work with our technical challenges and figure out if there is a way later in the fall to be sitting at this table so that we can be working with residents to solve issues at the same level around this table as the Planning Commission, which started in 2000, so 24 years ago, did for the better part of 20 years. All right. Let me just move into the agenda. And I just want to know, with the exception of Jacob, has everybody read the minutes from the last meeting? Yes, so if I could have a motion to approve the minutes from the June Planning Commission meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right, those are adopted. And I want to take the opportunity to thank Jolie, who always does a great job doing these notes. They all require very little changes. All All right, so let's first start with public tree discussion. Um, and I'm going to give the floor to Michael Anderson to sort of talk about what's been done up to now. We are fortunate this evening to have two members of the tree committee there. And Michael, if you want to introduce them and sort of share what's been going on, what needs to be done.
Thank you, Christian. For those, we have quite a big audience today. This is unusual for us. Nice to see everybody. We've had a tree committee now for approximately 2 years, made up of a trustee, a highway superintendent, and 2 public village residents that are on it. Myself, being a member of the planning commission, since we recommended it to the trustees a couple years ago, I was asked if I would stay on the committee just to make sure everything goes according to plan. So there's 6 members. We have trustee Aresta now who's going to be on our tree committee also. We've made some progress as of late. We have started trying to get our tree, what's the word I'm looking for, Christian?
Inventory?
The survey.
Tree inventory,
Tree
yeah.
inventory that we were trying to get approved. We are in the process of trying to get that done. I know Steve, our highway superintendent, who's also on the committee, he's not here tonight, but I did invite everybody to attend so they could have some input on this new topic that seems to be very concerning to a lot of village residents, and it's a public tree policy. We have not done anything on it as of yet, but I know it's a concern of the trustees, and they did ask the planning commission to look into it. So that's why we have Peter Grealish here today, who's on the committee. We have Tony Piazza, who's on the committee. We have Len, who is now the new trustee in charge of the tree committee. So they are here to answer any questions that you might have or to give any input that we might ask of them. With that, I'll turn it over to you as far as what the public trees might, what we might want to do about the public trees.
Okay, so I just went back to the master plan to sort of think about, as we wrote chapter 107 for trees in general, public tree policy, and addresses this community forest plan. That's on page 80. And there are 3 main things that it speaks to and which are also addressed in the chapter 107 of the code of things that need to be done. One is a tree inventory, as you mentioned, and the way to do this is to go get a grant, have a discussion with the trustees to see if they're willing and able to match the grant, whatever it is. But one needs to, there's an annual grant by the Arbor Foundation and others. So one needs to figure out, you know, if you want to do that, if that's the way to go, how much the grant is, what's the matching, get the trustees to consider whether they want to do this or not. But that's the step 1. The step 2 is best practices, planting, sustaining the trees. 15,000 of them are in our roadway, and certainly that's something that needs to be written, and it's really standard operating procedures in terms of how do you go about it in doing it. In the code as well, we talked a lot about heritage tree and defining heritage trees. I know we've defined one out of necessity, but I'm not sure if we've actually sat down and looked at everything that's in the village and see if we have other heritage tree that are worth your consideration to be designated as such. I don't know if you've thought about it and that's been done, but that's certainly another task to think about. And the third one is the sort of 5-year plan. That's really what you are thinking about doing in caring for these trees on a 5-year forward plan. which is a proactive situation as opposed to reactive, which is what you had to do over the last couple of years and did a great job. Anyone who's gone around the village, compare and contrast over the last couple of years, the amount of work that's been done has been terrific. DPW has really focused, so I think the efforts to be a tree city has really gotten the community to focus on that asset. It is an asset. There's been a lot of time and money spent. There's still a lot to do. So that's what I wanted to share with your group, and maybe we can sort of have an open discussion on things that we think we can do short term, things we know we are going to be challenged to do longer term, and how the commission we could help you guys on the tree committee to achieve all these goals, to have this as a as an effort which has teeth and can continue with time. We're not all going to be here in the future, and hopefully our next generation are going to continue what we've started, and see what it is that we can do to help. Peter or Tony, do you have any thoughts on that? Because you're the guys doing the work on the tree committee.
I mean, there's obviously very many heritage. Talk about heritage trees.
Yeah, I'm sorry about this. Unfortunately, I wish it was a more interactive discussion. In this setup, we can't.
No,
So thank
I'm
you
sort
for
of
that.
unprepared. I didn't know really what to.
Yeah.
I don't have anything.
No,
prepared,
that's
but
fine. That's fine.
I like the fact that you're talking about heritage trees because I know a lot of trees just right in the village vicinity right around here that I would consider important trees because of their variety, their growth habit, and their maturity, and the. So I think that's a great start. I think at our next meeting, I think we should discuss how we're going to go about and identifying those trees. I think that's something that we should put on the list for the next meeting. I think that's a great idea, that's all I really have to say right now. But I think that's a good start, getting and really protecting some of the what we consider the important trees in the village. The tree that you were talking about obviously was an incident that was going on down towards the reservation, and I think we kind of did a good job with that. And I think everybody was satisfied as far as that was concerned, and I think I all calmed down.
Yes, you did. You did.
So I think that was a good move on our part, and to continue to deal with situations like that as they arrive. Steve's always asking me to go look at different trees because homeowners, one reason or another want to take a tree down, and we have to kind of decide what's reasonable and what's not reasonable, and that's another task that we're sort of going through right now, and how to approach some of those difficult situations. I think we haven't had a meeting in quite a while, so I think the next meeting we're going to have some things to discuss, and I think that's a great topic that we should look at.
I'll give you, I printed this chapter 107 that we had worked on, one of the sections here, 104, 107.4, section C talks about the authority in the recommendation to the Board of Trustee for the designation of heritage trees that you were just talking about. So it's there. I'll give you one copy. So I think I gave you one at the time, but maybe Tony could use one.
Okay.
I have an extra one. And page 80 of the master plan sort of gives you a sense. But I think the message tonight is really to see, as you think these things through, and I know you guys are volunteers, you're doing a great service to the community. You guys are arborists, which the village doesn't actually have on staff. So you're providing us with this qualification. If there are things that
I am not an arborist.
you're not, okay, I thought one of you was. Okay, so I thought we had an arborist somewhere.
I've been in the business for 50 years. So
Yeah, you're better than an arborist. I know you know your stuff.
I like to say I'm not certified, but I'm certifiable.
Right. So look, well, I think the message here is sort of just to share with you everything that needs to be done, which is a lot. Whatever the Planning Commission can help you with, in whether it's creating a plan, long-term plan, and working this through, we're happy to help. And Michael can sort of liaise with us and see where we need to contribute to the good work you're doing.
Every meeting that I've been to, Michael has been there, and working together, try to
Yeah.
put some things in motion.
Yeah, we're hoping you're meeting monthly. That's what we sort of set ourselves in the code to do. So that takes a certain amount of discipline. And at this season, when everybody's working really hard to deal with plantings, vegetation, whatnot in your business, I realize it's hard. But so whatever we can do to help. All right. So we're now, unless there's anybody else who wants to sort of come and speak about public trees, we'd love to get community input in terms of what's been done, what we're talking about, what thoughts you may have, and to contribute. So this is your time to, before we get into private trees, time to come and discuss. Anybody? Sheila?
Sheila Piper, 56 Hildreth. This is all kind of hearsay on my part, but someone, and I honestly don't remember who, told me that although the village had planted some enormous, to me, sounding number of trees, 189 maybe, or something. Okay, a lot. That was only half the number of trees that had actually died or been taken out. So obviously, although it's great that steps are being taken, it's not even at replacement value, let alone enhancement value. So another idea that at some committee meeting that I was at, don't know which one it was, someone suggested that the public might want to be involved in this in terms of sponsoring trees. Maybe you were all there too. I don't remember when I heard this, but it's not being mentioned here. Obviously, money is always an issue. And it's also has a second benefit of making people really feel connected to the village and to what is happening and feeling a part of it. So I would hope that the tree committee for the public trees might really consider that idea and allow, citizens who feel so inclined to donate whatever amount of money might be decided was going to, quote unquote, plant a tree.
So that's a great idea. Thank you very much on that. What I will tell you, and I'm looking for the section in the code, is section 107-9, private donations for purchases of public trees. So we have thought about it. We put it in there. And I'm glad you raise it because it needs to be, we need to address it regularly. So there's a lot of bench that are getting donated. There's so many benches you could accommodate in the streets. Trees are a good way to do it. And when you do that, you'll receive, as if it was a 501c3 donation, you will receive a receipt from the village as something that you can take as a deduction on your federal taxes. That's been coded in, as I said, 107.9. It's there.
Sorry, 107.9 in the village code?
In the village code, yes. So what I think we probably should do more often is to promote that idea of public-private partnership, P3, between our residents and donating trees.
Yeah, and the mechanism for doing that needs to be made clear to the public.
I'm going to talk about that.
Yes, go ahead.
Tony Piazza, 27 Henry Street, local landscape designer, maintain, install business. I do a lot of public work with the village of East Hampton, so I'm very familiar with how they manage their trees, and I think it's a great example of what to aspire to over time. But you're right, there needs to be a public-private partnership, and in East Hampton, it's the LVIS, the Ladies Village Improvement Society. They receive all the money, and by the way, it's $5,000 per tree, and that doesn't mean that you're planting a tree. For $5,000, you get a bronze plaque that could go on a tree that exists already, and they have no problem selling those units of $5,000. And they also work with, I think one of the problems with public tree care is that it stresses an already stressed workforce in the village highway department. They raise so much money that they hire businesses to take care of the trees. We've all seen Whitmore's taking down enormous heritage elms that died on Main Street in East Hampton. So I think that these are all things we've talked about on the tree committee. So we know where to go. We just, I guess, if you're asking us how you can help us, it would be how do we get to that point? Is there an LVIS in Southampton Village? Can they be reinvigorated and help with being a vehicle for receiving funds, and then forming a committee to actually allocate those funds? The other thing I wanted to say, I've worked in other communities that take their trees very seriously. One is Greenwich, Connecticut, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and one of the Caribbean islands. So just to give you an example of
In Park Slope, Brooklyn.
Park Slope, Brooklyn.
Prospect Park Alliance, yeah.
Okay. Well, in Greenwich, you can't cut down a sapling without a permit. And they have huge enforcement. Like, they have a whole team of people that get involved whenever a building permit is applied for. There's an entire inventory of trees that have to be, and I know I'm switching into the personal part of it, but what I'm trying to say is that and in Florida, any tree that's cut down has to be replaced with 3 native trees. And you have to get a permit to do it. So
These are public or private?
both
Okay.
in Florida. And in one of the islands that I work on, it's the same thing. They take the plant material very seriously. It's all inventoried before any building project is done. And its replacement has to be in kind or more, and it has to be native plant material. So I guess what I'm saying is between Peter and myself and the other people on the committee, you have a lot of knowledge, and we would love to, and I know it's going to take time, but we would love to kind of ramp it up and just make this village.
No, that's terrific, Tony. And I know this is your first couple or 2 or 3 months doing this.
Yeah.
And it's great to have you there and spending the time on it, shouldering the effort with Peter. That's terrific. I like the idea of the LVIS. We should probably, Michael, think about heading over to East Hampton and do 2 things. One, to see if they have what's it called? Basically a forest plan that they've written something somewhere. And talk to maybe whoever the chair is at the LVIS and learn and understand what they've done. I mean, I've always admired, every time I go to East Hampton, the first thing that strikes me over there are the beautiful trees when you walk in. I know we finally, thanks to our mayor, made efforts in our street where we come in, you go down County Road 39, you make a right at the BP station, and you come in the village, and you now have the semblance of a welcoming, tree-lined, so those are good progress. But certainly East Hampton's a great example.
Olivia Brooks is the woman in East Hampton who's been the
Do you
chair
know
of
her?
Yeah, very well.
So we need to.
No,
And
just so you know, we have discussed
Oh, you
this
did?
at our
Okay.
previous meetings, and it's an avenue that we have been discussing, and I'm sure you can give me that information at the next, because Tony, like, as you said, I think is a new member, has brought a lot to the table so far, and this is one of the things he discussed at our last meeting, and we will certainly take that into consideration.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay,
Okay,
I think
thank
there's
you.
some other people that want to talk. So
All right.
Hi, I'm David Hart, 35 Hilder Street. I think what activated a lot of us was there's a property on Layton Avenue where there's going to be construction done, but they went in and totally clear-cut many mature trees out of the backyard. And none of us got any kind of planning commission or any kind of notification of the plans for doing that. And it just points to the idea that this is also a private issue, that heritage trees on private property should also be protected. And I see in the master plan that they're talking about green coverage requirements, and those should be enforced as part of this. And also they're saying a tree preservation ordinance that would require documentation of trees with a caliper width more than 10 inches. So I think it's important that not only the village trees, but also private trees be protected.
David, right? So thank you for that. That was the next subject of tonight's conversation. So we're sort of, once we finish with the public discussion, we want to move into the private tree discussion. So we agree with you, and that's why it's on the discussion for today. I just wanted to see if there's anything more to talk about on the public and what the work has been done. Then we can move on to the private. And as David, you pointed out, as the second subject of discussion here on private tree, on the comp master plan on page 94, there's a recommendation, and I'll just read it out loud, and we can think about it and work our way through from there. Because a lot of effort had been done in previous administration back in 2018. A lot of work had been done to think about this. Public and private trees were put together. There was a lot of pushback on private tree legislation. And so we decided to take some of this good work that had been done and sort of break it down in little pieces. So we did the public side first, knowing the private was going to be a challenge. So now we're addressing the challenging part, which is the private side. What it says on this page 94, as you pointed out, sir, implement a tree preservation ordinance which requires documentation of trees in any yard setback that have a caliper width greater than 10 inches. This documentation would occur during approval process for a new structure or an application for a demolition permit. Permits would be required to remove a 10-inch tree. There's that recommendation of the master plan to think about. I know there's a lot of discussion about extending this perhaps to what you've just said, and there are other locations. I think on Great Plains, there's another property where recently a lot of trees have been taken down that are beyond the setbacks. And the question is, in order to be successful in the first instance, to go through, I would say, the easiest common denominator, which is what is in the master plan, and think about that first, and maybe start thinking about second part of legislation, which would maybe address some of those heritage trees that are outside a setback, whether the community wants to think about protecting those, as you're pointing out, and how to do this. Now, one of the issues that I always think about when you put legislation of any kind is code enforcement. Are you wasting your time putting a legislation because it'll never be enforced? And that's really the challenge. In this case, what is interesting is to think about, and I'm just discussing this to get some feedback from all of you here tonight, is on the second phase, if you were to do it in two phases. Phase one, what you've got in your master plan is fairly easy. Phase two, if you were to go down that path, is to think of it not as a penalty, but as a negotiation point with a variance that you may look for, or issues that you're looking for a land use board. If you're protecting your heritage tree, to have a negotiation against that heritage tree in whatever authorization you may be looking for. That might be a better way to think about it, as opposed to being a negative. It's a positive enhancement for people to think about this, one. Two, I'm not clear how we can actually, frankly, truly enforce. It's hard enough to enforce some of the decisions there, or to have decision land use board to be upheld. To add that on top, I'm not sure it'll be a fruitful exercise. That's really enforcement is the key issue that I'm thinking about. So I'm curious. I know, Sheila, you have some thoughts on the private side. If you want to start the conversation with here and sort of think this through. For us to think this through, if you think that what we have in a master plan is a good way to start, and if you agree with the phasing of the concept, if we want to do a phase two, maybe 6-9 months down the road, if we can get phase one done, and hear some of the residents' thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I completely understand what you're saying is phase
Okay.
one. I'm sorry. I know, but I'm not saying anything. I don't completely understand the phases. I know that you sent me some documents, and Michael Irving's here. I think it was while he was mayor that this was
It
going
was,
on.
absolutely. He checked.
And it wasn't 2018, it was 2016.
16, okay.
Okay, that's because you sent me a law that obviously never passed. And then you also sent me legislation from another community, and the Mamaroneck was mentioned in the New York Times this morning. So you're talking about Greenwich. I mean, it's all over. I don't know that we have time to do phases, the way these trees get cut down. And I frankly think you're right, enforcement is crucial. I think sometimes, I don't know anything about how the building department operates, what kind of inspections happen, what kind of, but certainly seems to me that sometimes things just happen bing, bing, bing.
Right. So let me
But
ask,
okay, yeah.
so let me answer to answer your question in terms of what I mean by phase. So you have the passive least resistance, which is what is in your comp plan. We're simply dealing with trees that are 10-inch calipers or greater in your setback. The idea is a protection of your neighbor. So you have trees that protect your neighbor from looking into a property, and the idea is to protect those trees, and that's really what the master plan was about.
So
the
you're
village-
saying if it's a 10-foot
If
in
it's
from
a
the line,
10-inch
you can cut everything
caliper-
down except the 10
If it's a
in the
10-inch
10-foot
caliper,
in the 10-foot
and you're going into a,
Caliper is the diameter of the trunk.
No. I'm not saying that. He's talking about setbacks. So where I live, the zoning.
About caliper.
No. Well,
So-
I'm completely, I was upset originally when I came to the board meeting and you were there because it's a 10-foot setback from the line that you cannot build. And yet they cut down this beautiful tree that was well more than 10 caliper, but it was not more than 10 feet in its trunk, and therefore a building couldn't have been where the tree was, and yet
Right.
they cut
So-
it down.
Right.
So that's when you say setbacks, I thought that was what you meant.
yeah, so you have a lot, you have a setback.
Right.
And so that's the 10 feet you're talking about, depending on, I guess, the zones,
Well, that's
right?
the smallest one, I think.
So it's within the perimeter, to use another term, that setback of the lot, right? And within it, if you have a tree that is 10-inch in caliper, in just the trunk, right?
Right.
So about that, right? You would need, if you want to take it down, if you want to take it down, you can at any time, unless you go and ask the building department to do work on your property and get a building permit or a demolition permit. In which case, if you do that, then you'd have to inventory these trees in the setback. And then if you would want to cut it, you'd have to get, and that's the question, you'd have to get a permission. One of the question would be permission from whom? The building department or the tree committee? But that's the concept. So that's the first concept. The
Can I just
second-
interrupt and say something? If you do it that way, people are going to outrun that by simply saying, well, I'm not doing anything, but I'm cutting all the trees down. And then 6 months.
Then I go to the building department.
6 months later, they go to the building department and say, oh, now I want to put a pool in. I mean, people are smart, and
Yes.
lawyers are even smarter in this town.
Yes.
So that is not going to do anything.
So you would advocate that anything that's in a setback, whether there's a building permit or not, that you would need to have
Well,
a permission.
that's what we have to do if we want to protect the trees.
I mean, I'd love to hear Michael Irving's opinion on the topic, but I know that's kind of I think if I recall back in 2016 when you tried to do that, that's where there was a lot of pushback and failure in the system. So I'd love to hear, Michael, your thought.
Well, in
And
2000.
thank you for coming tonight.
Sure, thank you. I'm Michael Irving, 66 Prospect Street. In 2016, it was a little broader, as if you've read the thing.
Yeah, I did.
Where we were looking at vegetation too and other things to try to keep privacy, which you're doing now. You're looking at side lots. That's what the master plan does. But I think there's two things that hit me when I hear you all talking. First off, public trees in village right-of-ways and down our streets, there is a code, they can't be cut, period. And it's up to the trustees to decide if a tree is in the way or a construction company has to get in. So to me, the public issue is a no-brainer, shouldn't even be discussed, because the trees can't be cut, period, unless you get trustee permission. In the private sector, the reason that the 2016 never really went to vote, the resolution was done, everything was laid out, was because of the infringement on private property. Okay, so how do you address that? My idea is that giving people penalties or tickets for cutting down a tree is useless, because they'll cut the tree down. You know how long it takes to cut the tree down. If you really want to get it down, you can get it down real quick, and nobody's going to be able to do anything about it. So the concept that a lot of communities use is to promote the individual property owner to retain the tree, point out its importance. We have 2 garden clubs in the village of Southampton. We should utilize them to help us with the trees. One thing you'll find in Southampton is that if one person of notoriety does something, if they preserve their tree and they go to the garden club and they arrange it so that it will be in perpetual existence, you're going to find everybody follows them. Most of the village of Southampton is like lemurs. They'll just follow everybody. So I think that if you take an important piece of property, identify the trees, that's your first thing, is to log them in. There are some, beautiful copper beeches in the village on Halsey Street and on Halsey Nick Lane, and every other areas. Peter Marino, look at the trees he's put in there. I don't know if you want to identify something like a copper beech because they aren't indigenous to this area, but they are a magnificent tree. So I think first you got to catalog the trees that are in the private sector. Then you got to turn to the property owner and you got to say, well, you have this tree here, and it's not in, the purpose of the master plan was just privacy issue. These trees here are grand trees that should be kept for infinity. How do we keep them? You provide possibly a tax incentive. If you have a tree, you have a tax incentive, the person gets a reduction on their tax roll. Everybody loves that. There are other communities that use carbon credits, but we don't have that really in our village. And then you can also use zoning. Somebody may have a magnificent big caliber tree in the middle of the yard and they want to put in a swimming pool. Well, they can go before the ZBA and get a variance for their side lot and maybe move the pool closer to the side or in front of the house, etc. So there's what I'm really saying, there's a lot of things you can do to promote people to keep trees. Everybody wants to keep a tree. They really do. There's very few people that want to clear cut unless they're somebody that had bought a house and wants to build some magnificent thing in there on an old piece of property. So I think that the public issue, not an issue. Just can't cut the trees
Yeah, I mean,
in
we've
the
dealt
public
with the
right of
public,
way,
yeah,
period.
so that's done already.
Done.
107 was done a couple of years ago, and
Yeah.
it's working.
And then in the private, I think you need to look at incentives for individuals to keep and maintain their tree. Because if you start making it so that it's the thing to do to keep your big tree where it is, I think you'll find that most people are willing to do it.
Thank you for that. Mike, let me ask you, would you argue against the idea of working with setback legislation first?
No, I would avoid the setback legislation only because I think the setback legislation is for privacy.
Yes, it is. And you don't
And I think that's a whole different issue. What we're discussing here is keeping trees that are in our village that have historical significance.
Okay.
You know, I mean, a lot of these big trees, Tony, I'm sure you know, especially Bridgehampton, East Hampton, a lot of those trees came from a barge in, I don't know when, before the 1900s, it sunk off of Bridgehampton and every
Yes.
guy ran out there and grabbed the trees. And a lot of those are still in our village. To me, that's an historical tree.
Yeah.
So I think they should be kept. I don't think that the setbacks are an issue. I think that's a whole different
It's
zoning
a separate
issue.
topic. So what you're saying is it's a separate topic. You can deal with setback, but do it separately. This is what you're talking about is a separate topic. Got it.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you for that. Do our commission members have any thoughts and want to opine on this in terms of how to best deal with these issues? Where we're clearly separating those issues between what's in the master plan, which could be the easy thing to do, but I still struggle in terms of.
Well, one
Go
thing
ahead.
that Michael just brought up about cataloging private trees. How do you go about doing something like that? I mean, people.
You want me to tell you how it's done elsewhere?
Yes, if you could.
Tony Piazza, 27 Henry Street. So it adds a layer of expense and work to an application, but when in communities that kind of police trees on properties, if somebody's submitting an application, there's a tree survey that has to come along with the survey of the property. And anything above 6 inch and above has to be called out by the surveyor. And so, Sheila, what would happen is when the as-built survey is done, if all those circles aren't on that as-built survey, there's a violation. Not a violation in that somebody's going to get in trouble, but there's a violation of the code. So that's one way that these communities kind of enforce it and police it. There's a survey done before any work is done, and then there's an as-built survey done, and it includes the trees on the property.
Yeah.
It's just another layer to add to the whole process.
But that's if you have, to go back to what I was saying earlier, that's if you go to the building department and you go through an application
Right. Yeah.
process. Now, if
This
you
is-
don't, and you just take that tree
I
down,
don't-
and then 6 months later, go into the building department, tree's gone.
Right, and I don't know what happened on Layton, but if somebody if that happened in Greenwich, they would be in big trouble because all those trees would have been on a survey before they went in to do any work, and then
But as Sheila said, and it's a valid point, people are smart. They're going to realize that before they go into the village to get a demolition permit or something, they're going to knock the trees down.
I
you
agree.
know. So my point being is to try to get a private survey done on private, like to get a survey done on private property, is going to be very, very difficult for us to attain unless you can look outside on a street side, look at a property and say, oh, there's a Copper Beach. There's one on Elm. The Bishop House has a beautiful tree, and you can see that.
There are programs that can do that. The GIS is one of them that uses satellite
aerial
imagery,
view?
and yeah, it's extremely expensive. If you wanted to do the entire village, it could be done,
Mhm.
but I mean, and there are grants for that too. But it's easily done if you've got the money in the willpower.
Well, speaking of grants, I do want to let everybody know that I have spoken to the mayor about our grant writer and how important she's going to be in us trying to get some money for not so much private, but public works. And he has spoken to her about speaking to the tree committee and us on the planning commission to start trying to figure out where we can get a lot more money, because apparently there's a lot of money out there for us to get. So,
Okay.
but that aerial view is interesting.
One thing. Often in government, as administrations go to administrations, things get lost. It used to be required by going for a building permit that all your trees had to be marked on the permit. That was always done. Now, I don't know if that's changed or all of a sudden it got dropped or lost or somebody didn't pay attention to it. But traditionally, trees were important in the village and they had to be indicated on your permit process. So, I think if you dig back, you'll find that you do actually have a fair amount of information that's available to you that you can add in. And of course, using GPS and satellites and drones, you can spot other properties.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll talk to Jacob about this. By the way, the two of you work together, so he knows a little
Good
bit
to
what
see you,
goes
Rick.
on there. Good. Well, thank you,
Can I just say
Sheila.
one
Yeah,
more thing?
thank you for that.
So I did read the legislation that was never passed in 2016.
Yeah.
We weren't here in 2016, but I don't, and I understand how difficult it is to enforce these things, and you rightfully talked about enforcement. But I don't think that we should be discouraged and say, oh, we'll never be able to enforce this, so we shouldn't do it. I think that we should look at the positive side and assume people want to be law-abiding citizens, even though some may not, and that we should pass a really good and sensible law that will protect the treescape and,
Yeah.
all the good things. And the introduction to that law has a wonderful paragraph about all the good things that these trees do. I think everyone in this room knows that. I don't think that we should just throw up our hands and say, well, we can never enforce it, so we won't do it. You can cut down a tree in half an hour. Pretty big one went down on Hildreth Street this morning. Or was it this morning or yesterday? Sorry, yesterday. But, it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean we shouldn't really try. And the other thing, and this is completely irrelevant, but since we have some powerful people in the room,
We all are.
there is a problem with the notification that's going out for building permits, because people who are within whatever that 250 feet or whatever it's supposed to be are not getting the letters about, the zoning board or the notification letters. And they used to be required to be certified, and now they no longer are. And I think that they really need to go back to being certified mail. I spoke to Jeff Broadleib, a long time ago about this. When we first came to the village, we had another incident where a house went up behind us that we had gotten no notification. It's literally on our line. I don't think it's even 10 feet. So that really needs to be addressed. It was a mistake with the mailing label for us, but we never got the letter. And if they had certified, they would know, or registered, whatever, something where they know that it actually got received. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sheila. This has been a very useful conversation. I think certainly what I'm learning here on the private trees, we need to put a group together which has to include, I think, Tony, who's got a lot of good thoughts on this, if we could convince you to do this. So let me think about this, but I do want to put a group together, small one, to think about what we addressed today, what we've learned, what the residents are thinking, and I'm sure others will hopefully come at their next meeting, which will be held on Thursday, August 1st, to get more input. But I think there's a lot more to think about than what is just on this page 90 of the with 94, the comp plan, and what we can achieve sort of short-term, longer-term, sort of where the pain points are, the issues of enforcement, and what we can learn from other communities. So let me think about this and reach out to people here that have really contributed a lot. So I'd like to close those discussion then on trees, both public and private, and move to the improvement of cell service in the village. We dubbed it Project Diamond. And I'm going to let Michelle sort of summarize where we are on Project Diamond.
Thank you, Christian. I wanted to give you oops, everybody's leaving.
We're tree people, so not cell phone.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Peter.
Peter. Peter.
All right. So if you can go for it. It's amazing how cell towers used to be a big subject in this village, and now nobody seems to care, I guess, until we put it up. Then they'll be in the hall, but can't say we haven't talked about it. All right, go for it.
All right, the process to improve the service in the village started right after Mayor Bill Manger's election in June 2023. The official name of the project is Improve Radio Communications for Village First Responders and Improve Cell Service for First Responders and for Village Residents. The Planning Commission held initial calls with the town of Southampton, the town of Southampton. We conducted a study of the existing Southampton Village contract with Verizon. We held meetings with different cell services consultants. We did some preliminary mapping. We had calls with Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, Motorola. We had meetings with our first responders and public safety, EMT, police, fire departments. We did an inventory of all the Southampton Village cell equipment and locations. Then we hired a law firm called Harris Beach to develop the RFP. And the cost of this law firm work will be eventually reimbursed by the successful tower builder. Then, in parallel, there was an undertaking of a village code amendment called Wireless Services to help control, manage the possible installation of 5G micro towers on public right-of-ways, which is governed by a new federal mandate. And that amendment to the village code was presented and approved at the Board of Trustees on 11 January 2024. Simultaneously, the town of Southampton held hearings in October 2023 to build towers at Oakland Restaurant, the Inlet, the Fish Dock, and also at the North Sea Recycling Center. Both towers should be built by the end of this year. In November 2023, we held a presentation of the plan at a Board of Trustees. We presented a preliminary deficiency study, and our EMT, police, and fire department, Rick Fowler, Brian LaMonica, and Susan Hurto, the police department chief, presented their coverage issues in the village. The RFP prepared by the law firm was made public on 12 January 2024, and the village RFP evaluation committee was formed by the Board of Trustees. We met all 4 tower builder bidders on site on 29 January 2024, and then we conducted a thorough review with successive waves of questions to the 4 bidders to rank them with a sophisticated Excel scorecard. Each bidder conducted preliminary coverage and capacity deficiency studies. By May 2024, the RFP committee was ready to select the winning bid, but upon suggestion by trustee Len Zinenti and Mayor Manger, it was decided to ask for further improvement of the financial terms offered by the bidders, and a substantial bump for the village was obtained. The village will receive an upfront payment from the tower builder, and then
on an ongoing basis a share of the monthly revenues collected from the 3 or 4 carriers renting space on the tower or towers. At a June 25, 2024 Board of Trustees, Rick Fowler announced that Diamond Communications was the winner. And then we had a meeting with Diamond Communications on July 10, 2024. The meeting was attended by the President of Strategic Partnerships at Diamond, their CTO, their SVP Development, SVP Business Development Northeast, Director of Strategic Partnerships, and from the Southampton Village, we had Trustee Zinanti, our attorney Eileen Powers, we had Anthony Carter, we had Alex Valap, we had Julie Kudrop, we had Stephen Phillips from the DPW, and we had all the members of the RFP committee and certain members of planning committee, and even a end of meeting visit by Mayor Bill Menger. So everybody was there for this kickoff meeting. The next step is for Diamond Communication to complete a thorough deficiency study to evaluate the current wireless infrastructure and determine weak points in the village, and then to propose locations and the possible types of towers to ensure proper coverage and capacity for our first responders and village residents. No decisions have been made so far. We're working diligently.
Thank you for this update, Michelle. Very, a lot of details here and a lot of transparency in the process, so that's very useful for our residents. I will say that there was an article that some of our residents have seen in Newsday, maybe a couple of weeks ago, that was more precise in terms of the outcome of this deficiency study you were speaking about. This article is interesting, but way too early in terms of making any decisions as to where, how these deployments will be for the benefit of our first responders. So I want the public to know, who have read this article, that it's a possibility, but we're not there yet at all. A deficiency study needs to be done, and we need to analyze different scenario that will be done by professionals. We will go through public hearings in this room with the Diamond people, once they've done that, to discuss their findings and recommendations before we go to site plans, etc. So still a lot to be done, but certainly our goal is to improve cell reception in this village by summer 2025 and have really functional first responder services to save lives of our resident visitors by then. So thank you, Michelle, for all the work that you've put into that. Any questions from anybody on that? No? Okay, so we'll move on to the next topic, and that's for Jeannie. Strulas to update us on, I lost my, on the, thank you, on what's called the Business Revitalization Steering Committee. Roy Stevenson is trustee liaison for that. Nancy Kane, Eldon Scott, former planning commission member, John Betts, Basim Courage, Didi Moen, and Jeff Hall are on that revitalization. But Jeannie, if you could sort of provide us with an update in terms of what's going on and where are you going?
So we finally have a date. Well, we finally have the members, which is great. And now we have a date to meet as a group, as a committee, hopefully on July 30th. And it's really the first step to create the public-private partnership to address both short, medium, and long-term goals to revitalize the downtown district. And I think it's going to also be done in phases, but there's a lot of legwork that needs to get done in terms of data to see what businesses can support. So this is the launch, the soft launch, so to speak. More to come.
Okay. And if you remember our conversation, we have to sort of make a decision whether we want to partner up or not with the press.
Yep.
And at some point, when you're ready, I'm sure Joe Shaw would welcome the phone
Yep.
call.
I
He's
talked to
already-
Eldon this morning about this,
Yeah.
and we said that we'd meet first,
Yeah, that's right.
socialize it, get people, consensus, excitement, and then reach out. I'll reach out to Joe.
Yeah, so Joe knows what we're up to.
Yep.
I've had an email into him. He's responded, as you know. He's waiting for us to make a phone call, but he's aware of what's.
Okay, and I
What's
can
there?
certainly call him and just give him a sense of where we are.
That's up to you. Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you for that. So to moving on in the agenda, sort of update on deer management effort to secure more sites. Michael, your thoughts in terms of goals for 2024 or 5 in the new season, to achieve the target of at least 100, like 2024 was, or 23-24 season was. Pardon me the expression, is probably like shooting fish in a barrel in the first go-around. So the second go-around is going to be a little more complicated. We need more sites. How are we going to do this?
You're tough. You think it's easy. We have some very good news. The last trustee meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago, it was voted on to extend the contract with Suffolk County Deer Management for 2 years. So we have Michael Testori for 2 more years, and he has been telling us all along that it is a 2, 3, 4, 5-year program, that you just can't start killing deer in 1 year and have it be the end of it, because as we know, they reproduce, and they're back. They're back on my street. I see them now again, where this winter he did a great job, Brockett Funeral Home, where they all live for the most part in my neighborhood. So I've been talking to Michael. He's in the process of trying to extend the hunting season with the DEC, which is an arduous task, and working with them. But he's diligently trying to get approval so that we can lengthen the season till March, as opposed to ending it till December. He also at my
January, doesn't it end in January?
Yes, January. So
Okay.
now he, at my request, he's asking that I asked him to put together a list of properties, a wish list per se, that he could give us as on the planning commission, and we can get these properties that he would give us and fan out into the village. And we all know a lot of people, and word of mouth is a great thing, and try to get people to let him hunt on the properties. It's because his biggest problem is getting access to different properties to hunt on. A lot of people still don't know that we even have a program. We don't really speak about it much. It's a it's a sensitive issue. So I did speak to him today also, and we are on that, and hopefully we'll get that come October, when hunting season starts again. Before October, actually, we'll get that list from him, and we can start getting more properties for him. And I think that would be a huge help. Also, another huge help is if he gets that DEC permit, which will be in perpetuity once we get it. That would be really, really great for this village, and because we'll be able to do it continually throughout March, throughout the extended season. And there's certain things that we can do differently than what we're doing now to actually go and find a deer, or have the deer come to us, so to speak.
Thank you, Michael. Is the DEC permitting for a community or for a person?
It's right now for the village, for village properties.
So it's for a village. So it's for an owner. This happens to be village public land that a DEC permit is awarded. So anyone, not only SCDM or a local person, could actually benefit from this DEC permit?
I don't know if there's a restriction on village residents as to their hunting season, to be perfectly honest. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if there is. Is there?
I'm a member of Ducks Unlimited Eastern Suffolk County. There's Salt of the Earth People.
Uh-huh.
DU, we may be aware, is one of the biggest conservation not-for-profits in the Americas.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure the chapter would certainly support your efforts, Mike, if you haven't already talked to the chapter head, who happens to live right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these are my hunt buddies. So I'll get in contact with them, and they can bring the full force of the DU to support our efforts.
Oh, excellent.
Venison, waterfowl, these are all part of the DU conservation management.
Well, that
And they
would
have
be,
a very, very active, wealthy chapter right here in our backyard.
well, then maybe we'll get the other 100 this year that you're looking
So
for.
I'll dig up some names and I'll pass them your way in
Yes,
this effort. Yeah,
if
they're
you
good
would.
guys. Yeah.
great.
I mean, certainly anything we can do to help SCDM yourself to secure more site. You know, we all know people. We just need to know where we need to make a phone call to figure out and lobby for their permission for SCDM to do a culling exercise. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we probably, what do you think? We should start this September 1st, sort of this, parsing out this list and making phone calls to be ready for October? What do you think?
Well, he's working on it now, so maybe at our next meeting, I can hand out the addresses, hopefully.
All right.
And then,
I think that
get
works out
people
like a
in the
good plan.
summertime while they're here,
Yes,
as
that's right.
opposed to September.
All right. So moving on to the next item 5 on our agenda, other projects to consider. There has been some discussions amongst ourselves. Well, before I even go there, I was going to talk about Wi-Fi. Do you want to talk about water conservation and some of your thoughts and bring that to the table? Was that a topic that you wanted to bring to the commission and the public's attention?
Well, I think we're all acutely aware of our limited source of drinking water with our aquifers, and every year it seems to get stressed. And the bigger the residential construction, the more stress it's having on our total drinking water capability. The good news is the technology is right in front of us, both going into the residential or the public property and within the residential and public property. So there's ways of reducing water consumption, even for leisure purposes, where we can coordinate with the Suffolk County Water Authority. It'd be good to get their feedback, their issues, their concerns, and see how we can preserve our drinking water in our aquifers.
Yeah, so, Jake, thank you for that. I mean, not even a week had gone by from his appointment. He was already coming up with discussion point and ideas, and that was one of them. And I sort of suggested if we could access the SCWA rep, I think it'd be interesting to have them come at our next meeting, August 1st, or the one in September, to address that so that we could have our residents be sensitive about some of the enormous water consumption and wastage and think through some of the things that we could do.
Well, it's spectacular that they already post the largest water users in our
Yes.
community, which, I just used a highlighter, and if there was 40 of them, perhaps 28 was right here in Southampton Village.
Correct. So do you want to?
I'll reach out to him.
Could if you know who the guys are to reach out? I mean,
Yeah,
the
I
CEO
already
or
know
whoever.
the name,
Yeah.
and I'll try to get more data input, and then we certainly have plenty of talent in mechanical, electrical, and environmental engineering, where we can tactfully convince our very, very influential community to be a little bit more conscious in water usage.
Right. So, okay, well, we'll let you sort of run with that. I think it's a great thought there. The other thing that we all were sort of thinking about is Wi-Fi in our commercial district. And there were various ideas that were banning about on the topic. And I think within your discussion, Jeannie, of what you're doing on the business revitalization, that's certainly something that you should be aware and think about whether how Wi-Fi development could be done. I mean, I'll let maybe you, Michelle, talk about that first. I know you've given it some thoughts. You've done some homework with Hamptons.com, that is the operator down at Cooper's. It's kind of not, a best in class in terms of systems, et cetera. So what are your thoughts, Michelle?
Not sure yet. I've been thinking about it. I've been testing it with my iPhone, switching off the cellular service to see. And this morning I called you, Christian, from in front of St. Ambrose, and it worked perfectly using the free Hamptons.com Wi-Fi system. So I'm not sure. I've looked and asked questions and spoken to people. It seems like it's not a replacement for cellular coverage, but an addition. It seems that some communities are deploying it more aggressively. Obviously, it needs to be, like in the airports, it seems to be working well, right? So I'm not at the conclusion level, but I'm discovering that it exists. It's getting better. It's getting faster. It can be deployed, and it can be a good complement in an environment where the population grows so much during the season.
Jake, you also have some great knowledge in that area.
Well, it could be yet another opportunity to do a good public-private collaboration. I'm sure a few stakeholders would have interest in creating a robust infrastructure to benefit shoppers in the community, villagers in the community. I think we'd even have interest in that.
So, my thinking about this, a vision could be, and it's done frequently, is you have advertisers on there before you get access to the Wi-Fi, and perhaps a store, a restaurant may choose to advertise for a particular week, pay a number, which would amortize the installation cost of this, and doing it a public-private partnership concept, something like that to think about.
We have two prominent entities. One is the Southampton Village Chamber and the Rotary Club. So
Right.
They're smart business people, and I'm sure if we bring up a way of creating a secured Wi-Fi, where as soon as somebody hits Windmill, Job's Lane, or whatnot, having that access to entice shoppers and whatnot, I think would be something of interest to certain stakeholders.
Yeah, and I would think, and I'm tying this to you, Jeannie, and the work you're doing, that maybe some of the operators, I know you're talking to owners, but the operators of these sites, whether it's restaurant, et cetera, might have interest in something like this. But I know a lot of our visitors, particularly the foreign visitors who don't have a SIM card, who would certainly welcome the free Wi-Fi access to call their friends and family.
This can only be enhancing for the business. I see
Right.
no downside, and in some communities, it might be considered table stakes. So I think it's definitely something
Yeah.
that we can bring up and part of the revitalization.
Right. But again, it's really not a replacement at all for
No,
some of the
complement.
cellular we're working on. This is it's a separate topic. Now, one has to be careful as a commission not to take on too many projects, because we're going to get, then nothing gets done. But we have to think about a priority and talk to our board of trustees to understand where their priorities might be, and make sure that we focus on it. But it's great that we brainstorm about things that we think could be useful to the community and make those recommendations. Okay, Alex Wallach is not here with us today, so we're not going to get an update from him. I was opening for public comment and discussion, and certainly we went around it this time very differently we've done in the past, and get a lot of public input, which is really what I think a commission should be. So we've done that. So we do have a period of public comments. If there's anybody who wants to share something right now, this is your time. Thank you for joining us, Christine. And if there's nothing further, then I will make a motion to adjourn this meeting, schedule it for the next meeting of Thursday, August 1 at 5:30 in this room. So I'd like to make that motion if I have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much. Sage, thank you.